I just got my first bad review, and it was awesome. This time on Horrible Writing. That will never work. You can't publish that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's another thing you can do. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to spell? Stop. Be happy. Well, you don't bother me. I've seen better people. Do you really want to do that? And my third grade, give it up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey folks, Paul Sading, your host, Horrible Writing. Happy middle November. Can you believe it? We're almost up on 2019. So, the cool thing about 2018, as I start reflecting on the year, is that I exceeded my goal. My goal was to publish twice. I published 3 times. Yes, as a matter of fact, by the time most of you hear this, my third book will be released. It's been on pre-order for 90 days now because I'm trying to learn that process. But Chasing the Demon was published in June. Novel I Did a Podcast, How to Sell More Books Through Podcasting, was released a few weeks ago and is doing okay, though I don't have any reviews, though people will tell me on the Facebook page that it's great. I need those reviews in Amazon, folks. But with the third book coming out by Thanksgiving, for those of us here in the States, my landscape is filled, and now I'm locking down into the business side of creating, meaning I need to learn how to market these things, and I need to learn how to do those things, those tactics that draw reviews, because I am struggling to get reviews big time. Novel I Did a Podcast, again, has been out for about a week. Great comments on social media, great comments in author groups, not a single person putting a review on Amazon. Doesn't really help me. Chasing the Demon hasn't had a review in months. It's got 13, but that's it. And of course, 12 Deaths won't have them yet. And I did those things you're supposed to do. Worked with my beta readers and my advanced copy readers to ask for reviews, but again, you don't want to hound people. I mentioned it before, and I mentioned it as the books came out, and then I left them alone. Maybe that's a mistake. Keep tuning into the show and you'll find out. But I have had reviews. Most of them, by the vast majority, are very good. But I did get my first bad one for Chasing the Demon, and it was a 2-star review. And it had pretty strong language, using words like constant and redundant and identical, and the touristy stuff was overdone. So this person obviously didn't like the book. Called it a real slog. But here's the thing. No, for those of you who are curious, I didn't reach out to that person. I didn't report it for abuse. I didn't, track them down on social media to harass them. They're entitled to their opinion. I've had worse. I'll talk about that in the future. Not even worse. I've just had different kinds of non-helpful stuff. This one was actually helpful. And that's what I wanted to talk about on this episode. In this episode, 62nd episode, was or is the reaction to getting the negative review, especially as a writer who's hungry for reviews. I was excited to see another rating pop up when I refreshed the Amazon page. I wasn't excited to see what it was. I wasn't excited for the sting that came. But after a very short time, literally a few minutes, this sting went away, and I saw how right they were, particularly looking at something about the touristy comments. Those of you who haven't picked up the book and aren't interested in it, And for those of you who are, I'm going to try to steer away from spoilers, but Chasing the Demon is the novel adaptation of the first season of my audio drama, Subject Found. The main character had an encounter. Subject Found, I take figures from myth, lore, and legend throughout our human history, and I weave a fiction story around them. And season 1 was Bigfoot because that's my big love. I've been a Bigfoot geek since I can remember. And I wasn't sure how many seasons of Subject Found I would do, so that was always going to be absolutely the first story I ever told, in case it was the only story I ever told. So the book is that novel adaptation of an audio drama about Bigfoot. So it was written for audio drama. It was written as script. And Chasing the Demon technically is the third book I've fully written. So the third manuscript I ever finished. The first one was a 330,000 word fantasy that I did back in 2007, and that which is still sitting, soft copy and hard copy, in a drawer somewhere. The next one was The Scales, which is a horror book I'm still working on because it needs a lot of rework, because it is today nothing like what it was when I created the concept and started writing it. And I will talk about that in a future episode way down the line. This one was the first one, therefore, that I fully went through, wrote, turned around and edited, turned around and hired a professional editor. So the comment that was left for it mentioned getting an editor. It did have one. It did have an editor. Of course, this is this person's personal opinion. I think the editor did a great job. And he knew going into it what I had done and where I was at in my career. And he worked with me a lot more than he had to on that. The big challenge was that adaptation from script to novel. Taking something that was 45,000 words of dialogue, 40 to 45,000 words of dialogue, and turning it into, 90,000 words of novel. Not easy. Probably not the first thing I should have tried to publish, but I wanted to leverage the audience that I had with that podcast. I wanted to get into the publishing game because I've always dreamt of being a published author and felt, hey, I've got something that's already 50% done. Let's fill in the rest and go. And as I was so that book is the first in the series of Subject Found as a novel. The second season has already long concluded for that podcast, and that book is already written, has been written for about a year. I need to get back and edit it. I will after I'm done with the Scales. But in the writing of that second book called Rip, I realized how much better of a job I could have done with Chasing the Demon. My process was having the script up on my screen, using dictation software, and essentially doing that adaptation on the fly. Because I knew the story, I knew the scenes, I knew the people, I knew the scenery. And it made sense with Chasing the Demon. But I wasn't sensitive to those things I needed to be sensitive with. And I knew that, and I learned from it going into Rip. So Rip will be a much better adaptation. And I'll tell you what, this was a completely different process than simply sitting down. No, I shouldn't say simply, but sitting down, outlining, drafting, writing, editing a novel that is a standalone product. This is almost feels as if I used different parts of my brain for it. So it's definitely a unique challenge that I plan on getting stronger with over time. But all of this goes back to talk about the review process. I've been podcasting for 8 years now, and I've had my fair share of hate. My skin has been thickened from that. from that exposure. Back in the day, I used to fight with people. I used to ask people why. I used to explore things. I used to help them understand why they missed what they missed. And I realized my time would be better served doing other things. And it's a no-win proposition for us. So that's what I want to share with you. Do not do that. Don't even address these things with your readers. You get a bad review, you got a bad review. As long as it's legitimate, be fine with it. Maybe learn from it. Maybe don't even read it and move on. If it's not helpful, if it's inflammatory, if it's slanderous, then report it for the abuse to Amazon or whoever you're using. These things can be good. They can be helpful. A lot of the times you are already going to know, unless you're delusional, you're already going to know what you did wrong in that book that you could have done better. So don't hold the book forever to edit it to death. Make it the best you can make it. Get that professional editing and get it out. And move on to the next one and do better. Unless you are, again, like I always say with this show, unless you're okay with doing one book a year or every couple years, and this is just the thing you want to do on the side. But if you're looking to do this full time, again, kind of who I really look at and kind of who I identify with, you've got to get that book out at a certain point. You don't put out crap, but you don't edit yourself in an endless circle. And you have to be ready for stuff like this. This person's opinion is their opinion, and it doesn't bother me one way or another. They are right about some things. They really are. And again, I know why that happened. One, when I write, I overwrite, and then I need to cut stuff out. I've learned how to get stronger and more ruthless in my editing, much more than I was with Chasing the Demon. I could have done a much better job. I'm not going to go back. I'm moving forward. I've got 3 books waiting on me to edit, and I've started outlining an epic fantasy that I'm going to start working on and releasing to my patrons. So I'm moving forward. I've learned. I've taken what I wanted from that review. For you, know who you are right now and know what you can be as a creative. If negative reviews, even constructive criticism that is blunt is too hard for you at this point in your journey, know that in advance and do what you need to do that's best for you. Probably don't even pay attention to the reviews. Again, I feel if you're truly in tune with your story, your craft, your level, and you're constantly working to get better, there's nothing in these reviews that's going to be said that you didn't already know about your product, your book, yourself. You'll already know these things because you'll have worked as hard as you could. You put that thing out into the world. You started working the next thing, and you realized as you thought and as you reflected and as you wrote more what you did wrong the first time. I really don't feel there's a whole lot of utility in reading these reviews. Some people disagree. That's fine. I don't see it. I don't see the benefit, especially from people who don't do this. It's real easy to critique something that you don't do yourself. So make sure that you thicken the skin. Make sure you don't expose yourself to things that you don't need to be exposed to in order to keep that healthy writing mindset. Failing forward is fine as long as we fail forward. There's no failure in writing, in my opinion, unless you just quit. And I told somebody that in the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook this week, as a matter of fact. There is no failure unless you stop writing, unless you just give this all up. But do what you need to do to protect yourself from these reviews. I don't even necessarily put a lot of weight on the 5 stars. I love getting them. I love seeing reviews come in when I do, especially since it's such a rare thing. And I think I know why. I will be analyzing this over time. I will be talking about that in the Horrible Writing Support Group on Facebook, and I'm actually going to be beginning to do some patron-only episodes of this show where I talk more about the business side of it. Patrons are the ones who help me continue to put this stuff out and be able to afford to put this out. And so I think it's only fair to offer them some extra content for that. And that's what they're going to be getting. But I have some reasons why I think this is a problem for Chasing the Demon. And of course, I will continue to analyze it as we go forward. I hope that your writing journey is as rewarding as you've wanted it to be, as rewarding as you've needed it to be. I really do. I hope that you keep your head up. And if you are looking for that community, come over to us on Facebook, the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook. Look me up on Twitter at Paul Sading. And if you are an author and you're interested in getting more exposure for your novel, for your books, nonfiction, memoirs, poems, collections, anthologies, seriously consider picking up Novel Idea to Podcast, How to Sell More Books Through Podcasting. The feedback I've gotten so far on it has been wonderful, that it's very helpful and full of tools, tips, and tactics, which I spent a lot of time developing, so I'm glad to hear that. But I really think it will be helpful. And if you do pick it up, hey, how about leaving that Amazon review for it as well? If you are enjoying the show, a review of the show on iTunes or wherever you pick this up at would be greatly appreciated. It helps other people find the show. And of course, I would love to see all of you over at the Horrible Writing Support Group on Facebook as well. Until next time, keep being epic. This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.